All right, guys, welcome to the show. So today, Republicans have reached historic levels of desperation. They are trying to impeach Kamala Harris. Wait until you see the issues that they're trying to impeach her on. That's hilarious. Then we'll get to Rashida Tlaib, and believe it or not, the unions are stepping up to try to defend Palestinians. The world has the hottest day in recorded history as the climate collapse is upon us. Then we'll get to Cornel West going to war with Jill Stein. I got a compilation of Trump's brain malfunctions, and my question for you is that now more relevant that Joe Biden stepped down? Right? Are people going to focus more on, care more about Trump's cognitive decline now that Joe Biden's out of the way? Because, of course, Joe Biden's cognitive decline was pretty extreme and pretty clear. So we'll talk about that. And then later on, we have just a sickening story about how Big Pharma was caught charging a preposterous amount of money for a life-saving drug. So I'll tell you what they're charging and then what it actually costs, which is bonkers. All right, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. So let's start with this. Republicans, as I showed you guys the other day on the show, Republicans are just losing it over Kamala Harris. You can tell that they wanted to run against Joe Biden, but also that I think they thought they were going to run against Joe Biden. Like, they seemed convinced. In fact, Trump's VP pick of J.D. Vance is sort of like a cocky VP pick where he felt like, I can do whatever the hell I want because Biden's staying in and I'm going to beat Joe Biden. And so let's go ahead and pick this guy who's not the best in terms of trying to help me win. So other Republicans apparently thought the same thing, that Biden was staying in. And now, out of rank desperation, some of them are trying to impeach Kamala. Okay. So Representative Andy Ogles of Tennessee just introduced articles of impeachment against VP Kamala Harris for high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, they go on to explain here, this is what it says in the impeachment document. They go on to say, look, the issues that we're impeaching her over, number one is immigration. More on that in a minute. And then number two is, what's the phrasing they use? Breach of public trust. Breach of public trust. And what issue specifically? They're basically like, look, Joe Biden's really old. His brain wasn't working very well. And you didn't go out there and say Joe Biden's very old and his brain isn't working very well. So we're going to impeach you over that because you breached the public trust. Oh, these guys are incredible, man. These guys really are something else. Because think about it. If you were trying to go after Joe Biden for something substantive, I don't know, he's arming and funding Netanyahu as they carpet bomb babies in Gaza, so they're facilitating a genocide. That seems like a big deal to me. That seems like something that's ripe for real criticism. But no, they can't do that because they actually agree with Joe Biden on that one. If anything, they're more extreme. They want to send more money and more weapons to Israel and carpet bomb more Palestinian babies. So what do? We don't like your immigration stuff, and you didn't tell us Joe Biden's really old, bro. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? So, by the way, this is a really important talking point for you. If somebody tries to bring up, oh my God, Kamala was the border czar, the immigration czar, and so she owns the mess that is the border, and that's why they should impeach her over this. If you engage in this conversation with anybody, few points for you. Number one, the actual job that Kamala Harris was supposed to do was go to the source countries, the Central American and South American countries, and go to the source of the migration problems and address it from that perspective. So it wasn't necessarily the border itself. Okay, that's point number one. But point number two is, even if you say, hey, she's responsible for the actual border. Okay, how many people know this? New data shows migrants were more likely to be released by Trump than Biden. According to new data published last month, the Biden Department of Homeland Security has removed a higher percentage of arrested border crossers in its first 2 years than the Trump DHS did over its last 2 years. Moreover, migrants were more likely to be released after a border arrest under Trump than under Biden. In absolute terms, the DHS is removing 3.5 times as many people per month as the Trump DHS did. These figures are important for understanding how each administration has carried out border enforcement. During the Trump administration, DHS made 1.4 million arrests, what it calls encounters. In fiscal year 2019 and 2020, of those people arrested, only 47% were removed as of December 31st, 2021, which includes people arrested by Trump and removed by Biden, and 52% were released into the United States. Under Biden, the Department of Homeland Security made over 5 million arrests. That's a lot more in its first 26 months, and it removed nearly 2.6 million, or 51% of them, while releasing only 49%. In other words, the Trump DHS removed a minority of those arrested, while the Biden DHS removed a majority. Biden managed to increase the removal share while also increasing the total removals by a factor of 3.5. So in other words, let me boil that down to layman's terms for you. What they're saying is, both as a raw number and as a percentage, the Biden administration deported more than the Trump administration. Now, by the way, I believe that trend is the same also for the Obama administration. I think he was number one in deportations, which, by the way, actually makes sense because he was in there for 8 years. Trump got 4. Biden is getting 4. But so Obama was the deporter in chief, as he was called. That was his nickname. He deported the most. Then Biden deported more than Trump. Now, to be fair, there were fewer attempted border crossings under Trump and more attempted border crossings under Biden. But again, as both a raw number and a percentage, Biden has deported more. Now, listen, this is not something, if you're on the left and you're listening to this, you're probably not going to like that. You're going to view that as ripe for criticism of Biden. You're going to say, hey, look, man, your border policy is way too similar to Donald Trump's. Shouldn't there be two parties with two different philosophies and not basically copying each other when it comes to these issues? That would be your take, most likely. And that's what I call a fair criticism, because what you're doing is you're acknowledging the facts of reality before you give your take. The problem with the right in this instance is they don't acknowledge the facts of reality. They don't know that Biden deported more as a raw number and as a percentage. They don't know that a lot of the Trump-era policies were kept in place for a very long time under Joe Biden. What is it? Title 42, I believe it was called. That's the pandemic-era policy where they said, because there's a pandemic, you get no due process, we're just going to ship you right out. That ended, of course, when the pandemic officially ended. But then you have Remain in Mexico, which is something that was in place for a while under Biden as well. There were some back and forths with the court over this stuff too. But again, as both a raw number and as a percentage, Biden deported more. So in other words, if Republicans are trying to impeach Kamala Harris because she was the border czar, the immigration czar, then effectively they're saying, I'm going to try to impeach you because you're too hard on the border. You're harder than us. You're stricter than us. So we think that's too strict. If you're impeaching from that perspective, first of all, that's not really a thing, right? You can't just impeach because I don't like their policy. There has to be some sort of high crime or misdemeanor. But that would have to be the perspective you look at it from. It can't be, we're going to go after you because you're in favor of open borders. Because as I just showed you, we're not remotely near open borders. We are so far from open borders, it's fucking laughable. So, and look, this is what I've struggled with in the political conversation and debate recently in the country, is that I don't see anybody, first and foremost, going to the actual numbers, going to the actual facts, going to the actual information, and then adjusting accordingly. It's just, they have this genuine, this visceral sense of what they think the other side believes, and then they argue against that. And so to just assume Kamala gave us open borders or Biden gave us open borders, and that's why we're going to, it's like, well, you have to check if that's true first, and that's not even close to true. They deported more than you. And then again, you'd have to adjust accordingly. In a world that made sense, what would be going on right now? Republicans would be saying, we want to give a lot of credit to both Joe Biden and to Kamala Harris because they are doing more of our border policy than what we think theirs is. That would be an honest reaction from the right, but you're not going to get that. What you're going to get is we're going to try to impeach you over it. And oh yeah, we're also going to impeach you because Joe Biden is old and what? She didn't call a press conference and say Joe Biden's really old and I should be the president? Like, these people are ridiculous, bro. It's like with Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene and all the times that they tried to impeach Biden, and you look at the specifics of what they were impeaching him over, and it was like the dumbest fucking shit you've ever seen in your life. And you're like, this is not a thing that you could just try to impeach him over. This is just like you have a disagreement, right? Or it's a thing where you're pretending he did something or said something he didn't do or say, and it's like, this is just a mess. And that's exactly what we're looking at now. But again, it just goes to show you how desperate they are. But I'm just getting warmed up in this segment. So look at this. So Newsmax going after Kamala Harris. They were covering like one of her first speeches that she gave as the presumptive nominee. Look at the chyrons. Supports massive corporate tax hike. Okay, based. wanted to cap rent and utility payments. Based. Backed tax-funded Medicare for all. Mega, super, duper, ultra, turbo-based. Investigated fossil fuel companies. Based. So as a number of people were pointing out on Twitter, they're like, it looks like there's a secret lefty, a crypto lefty in the Newsmax control room, and they're low-key trying to get Kamala elected by putting stuff like this on the Chiron. That's what it looks like. Now, I'm sure that's not the case, because right-wingers will put this stuff on paper and be like, oh, that sounds horrible, but I think to a normie, these things sound amazing. So not really a great job. But again, we're just getting going here. So look, I'm going to warn you in advance, the audio quality of this is not good, but the substance of it is very important, so I'm going to play it for you. Here's what they're saying over on Fox Business.
Reading a research note from TV Cowan this morning, and it's titled, What Kamala Harris at the Top of the Ticket Would Mean for Healthcare. And they go through a number of issues that she's brought up. She supported Medicare for all, though she tried to run something of a middle ground by allowing a role for private insurers to offer Medicare plans as part of the system. She broke with most liberals by phasing in this new program over a 10-year phase-in period in the Medicare system. What are your thoughts on healthcare companies in a Kamala Harris lead?
Yeah, you'll notice we haven't really been talking about healthcare within our sector picks, and that's because we think healthcare companies could be challenged. There's plenty of regulation within healthcare. As you bring in more of the government to compete with the private sector and allow those profits to potentially be competed away or have some of those conflicting options for consumers, we think healthcare companies are not such a good pick for a Kamala administration if they were to win in November.
I love this. They're trying to fearmonger, and the line they're going with is, she wants to give everybody healthcare. And the part that they think is scary is, guys, health care companies and health insurance companies, their stocks aren't going to perform very well. Yeah, in a world that made sense, we wouldn't have for-profit health insurance companies. We wouldn't have an unnecessary, mafia-like, rapacious, parasitic middleman that gets in between you and your doctor and takes a cut for no fucking reason. That wouldn't be a thing. Now, by the way, I hate to be the bringer of bad news here. Is that the saying? Bringer of bad news? Bearer of bad news? Whatever it is. But I don't think Kamala's going to do Medicare for all, right? I wish. I'd love it. I'd fucking campaign for her if that was the reality. But I don't think she's going to do it. She took that position because when she was running in 2020, there was a lot of competition. You were up against Bernie Sanders and, many others. And it became like, at the very least, you have to support a public option. At the very least. And even Biden ran on public option, but then when he got in office, he dropped that and just expanded the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. But she's not going to fucking do it. I wish. But again, they are going to negatively polarize so many people into supporting Kamala because they're such fucking psychopaths. So wait, I'm not done. That was just the appetizer. Here's the entree when it comes to the fear-mongering over healthcare. You ready for this?
While she was running for president and while she was a U.S. senator, she and Senator Bernie Sanders sponsored a complete nationalization of health care, which was priced out. That's what I mean. It was priced out at $35 trillion. $35 trillion. Now, that's something, and I hope somebody, maybe J.D. Vance, somebody's got to bring that up in the campaign. $35 trillion. Let's nationalize the healthcare system. How about those apples?
You're completely correct. That's what I meant by healthcare transparency. Trump wants to reduce the cost of healthcare and increase the quality of it through his executive orders. These people, Kamala Harris especially, wants to go the other way.
Yeah.
All right, let me be clear about these guys. They're either idiots or liars. It's one or the other. There's no two ways about it. Now, why do I say that? Guys, we have the numbers on this. When they do that fear-mongering where they're like, it's going to cost $35 trillion. Literally every study that has looked into it says, and that saves money. That saves money. It saves anywhere from $2 trillion to $7 trillion, depending on which study you believe. Because the current cost over a decade is $42 trillion or $45 trillion, thereabouts. This is article that I have up for you right here actually runs through a bunch of the numbers and a bunch of the studies. But the gist of it is, no matter which numbers you go to, whether you use a Koch brothers funded right-wing study or you use a more neutral and objective study, no matter which you look at, the fact of the matter is you end up saving money with Medicare for all. Why? Because as I just described to you, under our current system with for-profit health insurance companies, that's an unnecessary middleman that's taking their cut for no reason. They don't do anything. They don't provide any value. They just get in between you and your doctor or you and your healthcare provider, and they take their cut. In virtually every other developed country, they have one version or another of a universal healthcare system, right? They vary in terms of, is it a totally nationalized system? Is it public hospitals, public doctors, and funded by public money? Or is it like private doctors, private hospitals, but funded by public money? There's different ways to go about it, but virtually every developed country has one version or another of a universal healthcare system. And again, those systems provide better care, cost less money. It's like when you go through the studies, it's upside after upside after upside after upside. We pay more, get worse health outcomes, have millions of people who are uninsured. So again, they're either idiots or they're lying. Because he knows when he's, it costs $35 trillion. He knows, okay, if we didn't do it, what would it cost? 40 trillion? 42 trillion? Thereabouts? So in other words, you're making our case for us. But they think like J.D. Vance should use this to attack them. Yes, he should attack them by saying, do you believe these people want healthcare for everybody? How insane, how absurd. All right. And that's what I got for this segment for you. So this is how desperate they are, right? They're trying to impeach her over immigration, even though the Biden administration has deported more people, both as a raw number and a percentage. So they agreed too much with the right. That's the actual criticism. But they don't think, they believe in open borders. No, they don't. You just made that up. So they want to impeach her over immigration, over the fact that Biden was old and wasn't doing well, and she had the responsibility to come out and tell everybody. Like, I don't even understand. You breached public trust. Literally every politician every day for their entire careers breaches public trust. And that's not a good thing, but it's just the nature of reality. The idea that that's an impeachable offense is absurd. Why wouldn't that be targeted more at Biden? So he was struggling mentally. He might have some medical issues. Why isn't it incumbent on him to come out and say, look, I got these problems. I got to step aside? Isn't that more of an argument to impeach him? But even then, it's still a stretch, right? They want to impeach her. And then also, as I just laid out for you, their big gotcha, their big attack is, bro, she wants to give people health care and stuff. Bro, isn't that fucked up? Again, they make her sound so much more based than she is. She's definitely more of a moderate, more of a centrist. I mean, she's not as bad as a Kirsten Sinema or a Joe Manchin or anything like that. She's way better than they are, but she's still a moderate. She's still a centrist. You know, she's not very radical. But they make her sound like she's Bernie Sanders. They make her sound like she's Tim Walz. She's not. I wish she was, but she's not. But the fact that they think this is like the big gotcha and they think like this is how we'll take her down, man, that says a lot about them, doesn't it? Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.